Chapter 20. 1. Ajin stepped down and stood at the foot of the throne. Masters of the inner temple gathered around the star and unrolled a carpet reaching across the threshold, and the two goddesses stepped forth from the crystalled cushion within the star and glided, as if on a ray of light, up to the judgment seat of Jehovih. Meanwhile, the musicians, a million voices, chanted, "Glory, glory to Jehovih, creator of worlds, whose place is magnificent and counterpart to endless time, the All, whose great existence surpasses the grandest thoughts of men and gods, whose worlds is splendor are the scrolls on which his hands write with the souls of mortals, his almighty will and boundless love." 2. And now the wheels of the great ship of fire spread out and around, and all the millions of ascended host formed a mighty amphitheater in which Moab occupied the arena with its 33 million brides and bridegrooms of Jehovih arrayed in white, but differently from the redeeming host from the Etherian worlds. 3. Moving in unison as one person in time to the music without a word of command, the host proceeded, each as a shining crystal in the place allotted, and void in nothing, and all so perfect as if Jehovih had made each a special work of wonder to inspire men with reverence for the talents he had created. 4. The hosts forming in place according to the music were so perfectly timed that when the music ceased, all was still. The throne stood in the east, facing the west. The host of Moab, who were the brides and bridegrooms of Jehovih, occupied the lower plain, and the Etherians surrounded them on all sides, rising higher and higher in the distance. 5. God and Hajah met the goddesses at the foot of the throne. God knew Oahspe hundreds of years before in other worlds, and he remembered Edisei, who had crowned him 200 years ago. Likewise, Hajah also knew Edisei and Oahspe. When they met, they all saluted by touching the right hands. And immediately the goddesses ascended to the center of the throne, and God went on the right and Hajah on the left. 6. Edisei and Oahspe looked hopefully on the brides and bridegrooms, but were passive. Presently the voice of Jehovih spake out of the light of the throne, saying, 7. Soul of my soul, substance of my substance, I created man out of my corporeal self. I clothed him with flesh, blood, and bones. Man's spirit I gave from out of my own spirit, ever present, and I quickened him to move on the face of the earth. 8. God and the brides and the bridegrooms responded, being quickened by the all-light. Out of corporate I came, quickened by Jehovah's ever-presence. By virtue of his wisdom, power, and love, I came into the world. To Jehovih all glory is due forever. 9. Again Jehovih spoke, saying, I allotted man a time to grow, to attain wisdom, power, and love, a time to rejoice, and a time of sorrow, a time to beget offspring, and know a father's love and care. In likeness of me, I gave him attributes of my attributes, so that man could know me and my love. 10. Response. By the bondage of my love to my descendants, I know my Father lives and reigns and will watch over me forever. 11. Again the voice of Jehovih said, I gave man a time in the corporeal form, so that he could learn corporeal things, and to learn where the tree of life springs from. I made man from no self-existence of his own, but from myself, and in the place I quickened him into life. I bound him for a season, but when man fulfilled his corporeal life, I provided death to deliver him into a new world. 12. Response. Beautiful is your wisdom, O Jehovih, and far-reaching. I was bound in the flesh, even as a beast. Like the attributes of a beast was my judgment, struggling for things of the corporeal world. With honor I looked upon death. As a sore calamity I judged your cutting me off. But you delivered me into another world, preserving my judgment whole, bringing me to the heavens of my forefathers. 13. Then Jehovih said, At no time did I bring man, newborn, into the world, without a mother and a nurse, and rich nourishment to feed him. Yes, I gave him angels to inspire him and lift him up, And I provided a Lord of the earth to manage his kingdoms and nations, and a God in heaven with a throne and judgment seat, so that man in the angel world would be provided and wisely instructed in soul, to comprehend the glory and harmony of my worlds. 14. Response. Bountiful, O my Father above, from nothing that I knew of, you brought me into conscious being, and in my helpless days fed me with rich nourishment. You gave me rulers and examples of government on the earth to discipline my soul to the order of men. And when I was born in heaven, I found God in his throne and a well-ordered haven of rest, with willing angels to clothe, feed, and teach me the ways of your kingdoms in the firmament. 15. Again Jehovah said, when man has fulfilled his time in the lower heaven, I prepare him by ample teachers for a higher resurrection. As brides and bridegrooms, my host adorn them, and I come in a sea of fire. First man was wedded to the earth by me, solemnized, and without man's knowledge. Then to the lower heaven he was wed, laboring with spirits and mortals. The voice departed. 16. The voice departed, and now Oahspe spoke, saying, Behold the brides and bridegrooms of Jehovah. When they were young, they were wed first to the earth, and then to the lower heaven, without their wills. Now they stand before the throne of God. In your name, O Jehovah, I command them to speak their wills. 17. Response. I put away myself for you, O Jehovah. Make me one with you. I put away the earth for your kingdom's sake. O Jehovah, make me one with you. I put away your Lord and your God, O Jehovah, for sake of you. Your Lord and your God raised me up and made me strong. But lo, the small spark of yourself within my soul has grown to be a giant, bowing to none but you, O Jehovah. O make me your bride, O Jehovah. 18. Oahspe said, the lame and the weak shall have a crutch, but the glory of the Father is to see his brides and bridegrooms walk alone. Whoever is wed to Jehovah shall never again, for self's sake, say to any man, woman, Lord, God, person, or thing, help. 19. Response. God and the Lord were my saviors. Without them, I would never have known of your exalted heavens, O Jehovah. Your spirit calls me forever upward. Your Lord and your God taught me to look upward. Yes, they prayed for me. Now I am strong before you, O Jehovah. From now on, I will pray to you only, but never for my own benefit, nor for glory, case, rest, or exaltation, but that I may be quick, strong, and wise, to do your will forever. 20. Oahspe said, brides and bridegrooms of Jehovah, all hail, all hail. 21. Response. Voice of Jehovah, all hail, all hail. 22. Oahspe said to Jehovah and his everlasting kingdoms, you are forever wed. 23. Response. To you, O Jehovah, I am wed forever. 24. Oahspe said, to be one with him forever. 25. Response. To be one with Jehovah forever. 26. The voice of Jehovah said, they shall judge from my judgment seat. In them my wisdom shall shine, for they are mine forever. 27. Response. To consider you first in all things, O Jehovah, this I shall do now and forever. 28. The voice said, behold, I have woven a crown for them. Adorn them for my sake. 29. Response. I will have no crown except that woven by you, O Jehovah. For your sake I will wear your crown forever. 30. The voice said, behold, these who were my sons and daughters have become my brides and bridegrooms. They are mine forever. 31. Response. I am Jehovah's forever. 32. Oahspe said, pass before the throne, O my beloved. The testimony of Jehovah waits his redeemed. You shall dwell in the emancipated kingdoms forever. 33. And now the host of brides and bridegrooms passed singling before the throne of God. The whole 33 million passed. And during this time the Essenars chanted a hymn of glory. And mists of yellow and blue and red fell from the firmament above, and the mist descended into the archangel's hands as they stood about the throne, and by them were converted into crowns, which were placed on the heads of the brides and bridegrooms. And on the crowns were the words, in one brought forth, delivered in Hanchi. 34. As the host passed in front of the throne, Oahspe said, That which springs out of the earth feeds and clothes the atmospherian, but the Etherian draws from the Etherian worlds. Behold, the crowns of the earth and of the lower heaven are only symbols of power, wisdom, and love, but that which I bring from Jehovah's kingdom contains real virtue. 35. And lo and behold, the brides and bridegrooms became as archangels by virtue of the crowns from Jehovah's hand. Chapter 21. 1. When the ceremonies were ended, Oahspe said, Soon now, in the name of the Father, we will rise and go on a long journey. And so that you may be apprised and consorted in love, I proclaim the freedom of the hour in Jehovah's name. 2. And the people went and mingled with each other, rejoicing and saluting. And Hajah, God, and Edisai greeted one another, and the lords came forward and were greeted also. And then came the marshals, followed by the Essenars, and next came all long-serving laborers. And lastly, all who had redeemed any man or woman from darkness to light came forward and were saluted and duly honored. 3. And for the space of 1 hour, all the angels indulged in revelry, reunion, and fullness of heart. But no book could relate the 1,000th part of the questions asked and love assurances expressed. 4. When the hour was ended, Oahspe signaled the proper officer, and he sounded the gavel thrice, and which all was hushed and still. Oahspe said, 5. As Jehovah bestows a newborn child, and then takes the father and the mother away to the S-world, so likewise Jehovih sent Edisai, my sister, to establish the lower heaven, and now I come by his command, to bear away this harvest to his everlasting kingdom. As a child bewails the loss of its father and mother, so will you who remain bewail the loss of this rich harvest of archangels. 6. It is Jehovah's will that you drink deep of the sorrow of parting, for by this bondage you will be again reunited in the heavens still above. The progress of the soul of man is forever onward, and in steps and plateaus. And the glory of the resurrection for the one who goes before is equally as great as is the sorrow of the one who remains behind. But the love that binds together is as a chain stretched out across the universe. Neither time nor distance shall prevail against its inventions. 7. Swift messengers, well trained to course the vault of heaven, will pass between you, carrying the tidings of your soul's delight. And as Jehovah gives summer to follow winter, and the winter the summer, so also shall the time come again and again, forever, in which you shall mingle in part, again labor together, but in broader fields, and again part for a season. 8. Behold the wisdom of Jehovah in placing far apart the places of the souls of men. For all things abiding near each other equalize themselves. Even as there is glory in a new birth, so is there glory in death. As there is sorrow in death, so is there joy in resurrection. The time has now come when these whom you see, you shall not see for a long season, but you shall rejoice in this hour of parting. For they rise as brides and bridegrooms to Jehovah. 9. The Essenars sang an anthem of praise in which all the host united, and great was its glory. And now Oahspe rose, saying, 10. Jehovah, almighty and everlasting, holy, holy Creator, ruler and giver forth, look upon this your Son, Hajah. O Father, in your name and by virtue of your power invested in me, I perpetuate and crown him God of heaven and earth. 11. Hajah, now God, said, Your will be done, O Jehovah. Then Oahspe turned to the 5 chief lords of the 5 divisions of the earth, and bestowed them in like manner. 12. And Oahspe stretched forth her hand, saying, Give me a crown, O Jehovah, for your Son, God of heaven and the earth. And Etherian substance descended into her hand, and she raised it up. And lo, it became a crown of great beauty, and she put it on Hajah's head. Then in like manner she crowned the lords of the earth. 13. And Edisei and Onesi came down and sat at the foot of the throne. 14. God, Hajah, came down from the throne with Wagah and Jud, and extending their hands, they said to Edisei, Onesi, and Sethantes, the retiring god, Arise, O goddess, arise, O goddess, arise, O God, and go your way. 15. And they rose up and marched forth. The proper officers had already prepared the ship for its Etherian journey, and soon as Edisei and Onesi had entered the central star, all the people who were to ascend went into the places assigned them. 16. God and the Lord's return, and tears to the throne, and now the plateau of everlasting light began to ascend. Music sprang from every side, glorifying Jehovah and the magnificence of his bountiful worlds. 17. And those of the lower heaven echoed the music above, and the light of the ascending ship of fire made all else seem a shadow. But higher and higher it rose, in the form of a crescent, slowly turning on its upright axis, turning and rising, higher and higher, and the music faded away in the distance. 18. In a little while, the meteor-like ascending ship of heaven looked like a star, till farther and farther off it disappeared in the distance. And that was how the first harvest of angels born on the earth ascended to the emancipated heavens in Etheria. Chapter 22. 1. God said, Arise, O lords of my realm, and go to the kingdoms of earth, which you received from Jehovah's hand, and may his wisdom, love, and power be with you all. 2. And the lords departed with their attendants, and went to their kingdoms over mortals. 3. And this was the beginning of the second dispensation of the first cycle of the Eoptian age of the earth. And the lower heaven was well established in habitations, angels, officers, and in all the requisites for the upraised soul of mortals. 4. And God dispensed laws and government like his predecessors, enlarged all the places according to the increase in the number of spirits rising up from the earth. 5. And the voice of Jehovah was with God, and as the first kingdom had been called Hored, so the second was called Hored, signifying the place of God. 6. And as it had been for the lords of the earth in their places, so it continued with the new lords, and they enlarged their places also, even according to the increase in the number of inhabitants of the earth. 7. And as it had been in the past, the messengers plied constantly between Hored and the Lord's places, so it continued. By this means, through God and his lords, all the affairs of the lower heaven were kept in harmony. 8. And God ruled in Hored 400 years, and Hored spread over all the lands of the earth. Chapter 23. 1. When the time of God and his hosts was fulfilled, Jehovah brought the earth into Dan of Eon, in the ark Laius, whose angels descended in a ship of fire, and delivered God, his lords, and all the host under them, who were prepared for the Etherian resurrection. At this time there were 625 million inhabitants in Atmospheria, and the number of the second harvest was 280 million. 2. The ascent of the second harvest was like the ascent of the first harvest, and the place of the landing of the second harvest in the firmament of heaven was in Laius and Ben. And the grade of the harvest was 78, being 2 less than the grade of the first harvest. 3. So the heavens of the earth passed into the care of the succeeding God and lords, who had been raised up and prepared for those commissions. And for the present there were no more Etherians dwelling in these regions. 4. Jehovah had said, Those who come out of the earth shall be sufficient to themselves. As a mother provides for her child, so do I provide for the spirit generations of a corporeal world. But when they are mature in wisdom, strength, and love, I command them to take the offices of lords and gods in the management of my kingdoms. 5. So it came to pass, after the ascent of the Etherians, that the whole earth and its lower heavens were under the dominion of those who had sprung up out of the earth. And it became a saying, the first was Etherian rule, the second was Atmospherian rule. For the earth had lords who had been on no other world, and a God who had never been on other worlds. 6. And it likewise came to pass that the Atmospherian rulers were more lenient in their government and less tyrannical than the Etherians had been. For as the Etherians had forbidden the Essenes, the newly dead, to return to their mortal kindred until their 50th year in spirit life, it was not so with the present lords and gods, for they indulged hundreds of thousands of Essenes for sympathy's sake to return to their mortal kindred. And these Essenes did not become workers in heaven, either for others or for their own resurrection to higher regions, but they became idlers and vagabonds in the lower heaven, often living with their mortal kindred till their mortal kindred died, and then, in turn, persuading these Essenes to do even as they did. 7. And God perceived when it was too late that his leniency had laid the foundation for disorganizing the kingdom of heaven. For the strolling idlers, knowing no other heaven, sowed the spirit of disbelief throughout the places of learning and industry in the lower heaven, persuading others that they were toiling to no good purpose. 8. They said, Behold, it was told us on earth there was a Jehovih, but we are in heaven, and yet we do not find him. Now we know, in truth, there is no all person. Come then, let us seek ease and rich viands that rise up out of the earth. And man lives on the earth and dies, and his spirit floats about, and then there is no more of him. Why will you serve the Lord? Why will you serve God? Be free and live for yourself instead of for others. 9. Thus it came to pass that little by little the lower heaven began to fall from its high estate. 10. The third Dan was 600 years, and God and his lords, having provided successors, ascended with their harvest to Etheria, and its numbers was 408 million brides and bridegrooms, and their grade was 66. 11. The fourth Dan was 500 years, and the harvest was 600 million brides and bridegrooms, and their grade was 58. 12. The fifth Dan was 300 years, and the harvest was 200 million, and their grade was 50, which was the lowest grade capable of emancipation or capable of surviving in Etheria. 13. And now darkness set and covered all the earth, and from this time until the end of the cycle, which was 3,000 years from the birth of man on earth, there were no more resurrections to the emancipated heavens. 14. The kingdom of Horeb was broken up and dissolved. The spirits did not love to labor or learn according to Jehovah's plan, but returned to the earth attractions, and they were called Drujas, because they did not desire resurrection. 15. And God, lords, officers, and teachers were without subjects and pupils, and mortals were overwhelmed by thousands and millions of Drujas, so much so that the Ashars were powerless to accomplish good inspiration. 16. At this time, there were more than 3 billion angels in Atmospheria, and for the most part they dwelt on earth. 17. Thus ended the first cycle of the first heaven of the earth. End of the book of Sethantes, son of Jehovih.